Okay. Good morning. My name is Harleigh M, and today I'll be presenting about female versus male athletes in the sporting world. Over the years, women have faced many challenges throughout history. The struggle to fight for equality within the sporting field has become one of the biggest concerns for years. Women athletes are fighting to achieve a gender-equal approach to ensure that there is a fair trial with women participation in sports and that male athletes are not treated their way into the system. To what extent has the labeling of sports as masculine versus feminine, due to the traditional views on gender identities, affected the performance of athletes? The sporting field remains male-dominant, resulting in the social norms of whether or not women are as aggressive to participate in competitive games, the degrading of women athletes because of society's perception of what an athlete should look like, and simply that women performance will never reach those of men. Gender role identification can be identified as how people view or assume athletes are supposed to be seen as their compatible role. As it goes for women, beauty has been what is socially approved. Sport is perceived as feminine when it shows its feminine side, such as gracefulness and beauty, and elicits visual pleasure, such as ice skating or gymnastics. Sport classifications based on gender compatibility can change because gender is a construct based on historical condition and respective culture. According to Tano, sport is perceived as masculine if it involves team stamina, competitive spirit, physical contact, and body strength, and more. Male athletes have developed norms of marginalization of sport. It is the restriction that female disciplines have to deal with, which has led to the labeling of certain sports as more appropriate for women, which according to the article named Identification of Gender Discrimination in Sports, are all forms of sports that focus on aesthetic and elegance that fit into the stereotype of appropriate female behavior. Looking at the graph on the right, it shows possible sports and gender price gap between them. As shown, more than male-dominant sports such as football, cricket, cycling, and golf reach over 80% of males receiving prize money, whereas more of the gender-neutral sports, including swimming, tennis, and volleyball, were 50% prize money for both male and female athletes. The idea of one gender has been ingrained in us since the day we were born, helping us evaluate stereotypes that lead to the formation of gender roles and gender typing. This is why many athletes have trouble balancing a feminine image with masculine qualities. According to the stereotype emulation hypothesis, people try to match their gender type behaviors to their gender identity. They adopt behaviors with a masculine or feminine connotation that correspond to their gender identification and avoid counter-stereotypical attributes. Because women's bodies are portrayed in terms of passive beauty and elegance, in contrast to depictions of men through strong and active bodies, it leads to the degrading of women's accomplishments of female athletes. While looks and attractive radiance became the main message of imagery, Matthias said, these understandings of masculinity and femininity play a larger role in legitimizing who could play which sport. This is why many athletes have feared that women athletes will be masculinized if they seek participation in a sport that is designed as more masculine, and the same goes for males. This is also why athletes tend to be more comfortable playing a sport that is more gender neutral. Key questions still remain in explaining women's growing involvement in understanding areas such as media coverage, where equity would contribute to legitimizing women's achievements and advancing the public's acceptance. Stereotypes and discriminatory norms, as well as a lack of representation, remain some of the most pervasive barriers to gender equality around the world. But the male-dominant world of athletics doesn't yet offer a level playing field. Women athletes still face discrimination as amateurs, and at the professional level, struggling teams have to scramble for sponsors and fans. Achieving a level playing field, women need a better leadership to build a better gender-neutral culture. The world of athletics still treats women and men's standards unequally and unfairly. There was a need for visible role models of female athletes that are excelling on the field of playing and reaching the Olympic podium, so that girls see their own capabilities. The initiative is to guarantee that barriers are to be broken and that women are guaranteed a fair and equal chance to show their abilities to reach the highest field of playing. Looking to the graph on the right, it analyzed why people may or may not find much interest in women's sports, and the underlying reason was that the lack of TV and media coverage. Women's sports are not as broadly broadcast as compared to male sports, and this possibly could be because people enjoy watching male sports more than female. According to Hyatt, there was a size difference between the group. Male and female athletes were more aggressive than their counterparts. It also showed that female athletes scored higher on the verbal aggression and irritability, whereas males scored higher on indirect aggression within the athlete group. It was also shown if female athletes play multiple sports compared to a single sport, they will show more aggression. The level of aggression shown by male and female athletes correspond with the athlete's competition level and the sport they played. There are many different ways to differentiate types of aggression and how it relates to sport assertion in male and female athletes. And as we look at the graph, it shows that 58% of men are more aggressive than females. Coupling with the stereotype, not only is it unfair to say that all women athletes are less aggressive than their male counterparts, it's very inaccurate to draw a conclusion without looking into all athletes and their capabilities. Women and male athletes both react and perform differently in sports. It is shown in the chart that to the right, males are naturally more physically aggressive than their female counterparts. But there is a lot more factors that come into play pertaining to athlete aggression and the different forms of aggression. According to Knoppers, the study of men and masculinity has worked with the concept of hegemonic masculinity to articulate ways in which elite competitive sports such as baseball, basketball, and football produce ideologies that produce force, aggression, and violence as values to be admired and emulated. This shows the difference between men and female relations to competitive sports, as well as the escalating commercialization of male athletes resulting in hegemonic masculinity. In conclusion, women's abilities and athletic performance has been degraded, resulting in a more male-dominant level playing field. Despite the fact that male athletes are praised and given more attention than women athletes, society has created different social standards for both female and male athletes to face. But that doesn't diminish the fact that there are double standards in the sporting industry that need to be abolished. There are many factors that come into play when it comes to creating a more equal sporting field for both genders, which, with that being said, it is imperative that the sporting world catches up and takes action to stop sexism, harmful stereotypes, and discrimination against women athletes. Solutions include leveling the playing field, providing equal media coverage for both male and female athletes, accomplishments, providing equal economic opportunity for female athletes. Limitations include only focusing on gender roles, in particular to only one sport and athlete participation. Media coverage not willing to give the same amount of attention to women athletes, which results in an appreciation for women achievements. Making sure that majority of all women athletes stand up for what they deserve in the sporting world to gain the public's acceptance into creating a more equal chance in the sporting industry. Thank you. Any questions?
I do have two questions for you. First question is, how did your research question evolve as you moved through the entire research process?
Well, at first, I didn't know whether I wanted to focus on male discriminatory norms or female, but as I was researching, I felt that it was way easier to find information on female, especially because the sporting world is definitely harder for females than males. So I decided to go with females, but I didn't quite know how I wanted to word it. So the wording was the hardest part. So I asked some of my peers if they knew like good wording for my question or my topic, and that really helped me for my research question.
Okay, and if you had more time, what additional research would you have done?
I would definitely focus more on the media coverage side of it and like spectators, because they play an important role in the sporting industry as well, and focusing more on coaching perspectives, because the coaches are primarily like the biggest role in like the sporting industry because they're the people who run the teams. So I was focused more on their perspectives on discriminatory norms in the sporting industry.